Okay, so we are going to make this a productive walk on the way back. I have been getting so many questions about creating a rental dossier because that is incredibly difficult here to rent a place. I think even more so now because with COVID and lack of funds and people having issues in keeping their jobs and just everything that's going on is just making agencies and property owners super conservative, and being a foreigner just is a huge red flag here. I'm putting together a separate post on just how to build a good dossier. It's sort of like your visa dossier, but a little different, that you have to show your regular income and where that's coming from, and they do not like it if it's foreign income at all. That makes it extremely difficult. I think the mentality that's best described is to come across as like almost like you're going into a competitive job market and you are competing for a job position. I mean, honestly, you have to think about your dossier in the sense of that it has to be super competitive to the point that it's way better than perhaps even a French citizen's dossier could be, okay? One of the reasons why it's so hard is because there's no credit score system here in France, okay? So how you get approved is almost strictly off of your income. The bare minimum, though, is that you have to make 3 times what the rental costs are, at the very least, 3 times. Essentially what you have to do is prove that you're not a risk. Just quickly, as an example, it can take a landlord, a property owner, or an agency literally like 2 to 3 years to oust a non-paying tenant. No joke. And during that whole time, they're not making any money off of it. It's just money all lost down the drain. And there's really not a lot of that they could do about it. It's a complicated system. And honestly, it's just in your best best interest to build. So again, check out my dossier building post about how to create that dossier. But how do you even find the place first? I would say that honestly, it's best to do like a short-term rental, when you first get here, like Airbnb, and have like a short-term but sort of long-term home base that then you could search for a place within that market, because there's just honestly almost no way that you could do it. Here though, being in, whether it's a city or you're in a more rural area and smaller village, you're going to look for your real estate agencies, and they're going to post, not necessarily all of their inventory is online. You actually have to go around to them and talk to them and see what they have available. You know, just the way that marketing and business is done here is different, and sometimes a little what it would feel like maybe a little old school. So definitely going around and seeing what listings are being posted in windows is helpful. Other hacks are to talk to anybody English speaking that owns and runs a business, like especially G owners or restaurant owners. They just have a big circle of influence, and they've been in your position. And if there's anybody that's going to know what's going on in the community or in that immediate quartier or want to take you under the wing, it's going to be somebody that is English speaking and feels a little empathetic towards you. That also goes for real estate agents. So when you pop into an agency, ask if they've got an English-speaking representative on staff. If they do, try and talk to them or get their contact information. And then just tell them what you're looking for. Get their email address and stay on top of them. Really, just communicate with them, over-communicate, stay front of mind so that when something opens up, they'll think of you first. That's another great way of being able to find a place when you don't have friends and connections in the area to make that happen. So going back to the finances piece, I think that there's two primary things that you just really need to focus on in your dossier, and that is the finances and providing the agency or owners a sense of security. As far as finances go, just anything that you have liquid, and not just in regards to being able to handle the that you're making 3 times the rent every month, but just cash, honestly, bank accounts, 401k, liquid savings, work contracts, kind of that show me the money mentality. As an expat, you might also be asked for a guarantor. This can be an individual, it can be your bank, but a lot of times you don't have those kind of connections and those resources when you first come over. So what do? There's a company called GuarantMe, and there's a few others like that. And basically what you do is you pay a fee, almost kind of like an insurance fee every month, and they will give you a quote on the website. You can figure it out. It's really dependent upon your rental costs and your own history. But basically, they're willing to take a hit if you default on your rent, and that's what it is. It's kind of like an insurance house. Random side note, this is the narrowest street in Paris. It's the street of the fishing cat, and it's got an interesting history. If you walk up it on the other side, especially if you have guests around or you get to know Paris and you want to surprise somebody, you come on this side. Notre Dame is at the end of the street. I'm like, wow, so cool. There she is. Now you know where I'm at. Attestations. Oh my God, you're gonna learn this word. Attestations. 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 Basically, in this scenario, it's so what does that mean? Translate everything, use post-it notes, explain everything clearly, make it easy as possible for them to say yes to you. And honestly, like, I explained that a little bit more in my dossier post, but I just honestly can't say it enough. Like, it's so important for you to understand that you can't come over here with an American or expat mindset. You have to do things the French way and provide them with everything they need to know so that they can accept you as a tenant. Last but not least, be prepared to pay in advance. Now, technically this isn't legal, but oh my God, it happens. Unfortunately, it happens. As an example, when we rented the apartment for my son in Lyon, they required us to pay 8 months of rent in advance in order to get the apartment. It was a total, I'll be honest with you, shithole. I had to renovate it. She only submitted my son's dossier to the owners for review and approval. So that kind of goes back to that same thing, like, try and find somebody that will advocate for you, because even though we had to do the 8 months in advance, it made a world of difference because she didn't submit any other dossiers when to the owners. It was just my son's. Like me, and you like to do your research online and can't help but have some sort of sense of control moving forward, do research. I mean, do look online at properties. It gives you a better sense as to what you can afford, what areas are of interest to you. And then again, once you're here, rent that place via Airbnb or something that's sort of temporary, because the last thing that you want to do is go to all the trouble of getting into a place and then you absolutely hate it. It took me, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different arrondissements before I figured out that I like to be in the Marais. You'll just really help yourself out a lot, save a lot of heartache and time and money in the long run if you use the short-term rental market to make those decisions. It's a strategy. If you can afford it, it works well. As far as contracts go, there's two. It's either furnished or unfurnished. So an unfurnished apartment is a 3-year contract. The benefit of unfurnished is that it's a blank slate. A furnished apartment or house is a 1-year contract, and it is up to you as a tenant and the landlord to continue to renew that every year. If that's of concern to you, then I would suggest going through a real estate agency for a number of reasons. Professionalism, you know that the owner is less attached, emotionally tied to the property, and the intake and exit process is done by a third-party inventory service. And we could talk about the pros and cons and the nuances of renting on a different day, but there's my hot tips for getting into a place here in France as a renter, and I hope you found that helpful.